So hi, welcome to the latest episode of Crip Campus, podcast about disability, access, and higher education.
Sure, that sounds all right.
With me, Ryan Parrey.
And me, Cindy Nover.
And we are joined today by, I realize I don't know how to pronounce your last name.
That's all
Brock
right.
Sieb.
That is correct. So Brock Sieb, and I'm with the Student Accommodations and Support Services Office.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thanks
Glad to
for
be
being
here.
And thanks for being here in the midst of finals week and all of the work that entails.
You all get it too. It's hectic for everybody.
What is Student Accommodations and Support Services?
Yeah. So it's okay to refer to us as SASS as our acronym.
That like sassy?
Yeah.
Or is that all right?
I get to say that I'm the SASS director.
Nice.
So
Pretty cool.
But our office, so we have kind of two primary focuses, one being specifically providing ADA accommodations for students on campus, and then doing all the navigation with students and faculty that involves. And then the other half is more generalized support services for the situations that impact daily life as a student. So students who maybe are having to deal with the court system for any number of reasons, students who have had a loved one pass away, some local kind of areas that we've dealt with, a lot of natural disasters. So we had a pretty big wildfire that occurred just off campus basically last year. And so trying to be a student while dealing with whatever that is, helping students navigate the policies that are at play, and then help advocate for them with faculty, staff in all of the different offices across campus. So that way they can do their best to be a human while also balancing that aspect of being a student.
And this is a movie reference.
Okay.
And what would you say you do there?
So something with my office is we all really tag in kind of wherever is needed. And I think that's, part of the nature of our institution is wherever there's some need, people step in to help out. So as the director, I oversee kind of both arms of the department and help kind of with like appeals or the higher level situations that maybe are getting a bit more involved or more convoluted, or specifically when there's a lot of policies at play. And when we really realized that a policy was not written with these certain circumstances at front. So making sure that information can be shared over with our policy review teams. I do a lot of communication with faculty. So making sure that the student's situation gets to stay private with them, but helping really advocate for those students and what their needs are. I mean, I still meet one-on-one with students. It's less frequently than maybe I have previously and the rest of my team does. But a lot of times it's the sounding board for my team and then still working one-on-one with those students. And we work a lot with the Title IX office and providing support for individuals going through that. So I meet a lot with those students, whether they're the alleged or the impacted party. We kind of balance back and forth who takes which kind of side of those, but working with those students to make sure, really they know their rights, they know how things progress, and they know that they have somebody that's really trying to help them go through whatever that situation is. So that way they don't have to think about all of those policies or whatever it is, because as pretty much any industry is, you typically don't have to know about a policy until it's affecting whatever you're dealing with in the moment. And so students who are dealing with, major life events probably don't have the mindset to let me sit down and really focus on what this policy says and what are all of the formal steps I have to do. So just making sure that somebody's there with them to kind of guide through that process.
That's fantastic.
Which is still not a great what do I do exactly, but it's a lot of student meetings and connecting with faculty and staff across campus to help share what that student experience is.
I have a question about, you mentioned, not right now, but at a different time, so listeners don't know that you mentioned this, that there's like a difference in your funding or something recently, because you may recall, although you weren't in the director position, you were with SASS a few years ago when I was doing my dissertation, when I was doing my sabbatical research, and I contacted SASS and said, hi, can you work with faculty to help them make their materials more accessible, which I thought was like the base activity that SASS does, like the most likely thing that SASS does. And I was told, no, our funding is set up so that we can work individually with students who have accommodations. And I was like, but I mean, won't it take you way less time to just talk to faculty and tell them how to make the most common accommodations already? And then it would turn out to be a funding phase, like a stream, like what you were allowed to do kind of a thing. So tell us more about that, and have you fixed it?
So I think there is the funding component. There's a little bit more of another one that I'll get into after we talk about funding, but predominantly our funding was hosted through like the student affairs division. And so even providing accommodation resources out to students, so buying adaptive technology, modifying textbooks, whatever it might be that has a physical cost associated with that, that was tied to our divisional budget. And so when we got a new vice president a few years back, and then as some of the staffing came in, we realized that it really wasn't a sustainable model, because that meant my office budget was going towards that, and I couldn't use it for all of the other things. Like if we needed to develop something just for our office, like we needed to pay for repainting, that had to come out of that same fund, but we had to prioritize the student experience first. So we started feeling like it wasn't sustainable to meet both of those needs at the same time. And it meant that as the funding, comes down from the state and everywhere, it was being portioned off and then viewed as kind of my operation budget was going towards funding students, which rightly so. Students need that. And I don't want that to be a complaint against it or anything, but it was the model that had been. And we just realized, especially as different costs were increasing, a big shout out if you are looking for a career path. Interpreting is a phenomenal resource for students and everybody who might need that. And there is an extreme shortage, which also means that prices start going up for those. So if you're an ASL interpreter, all of the prices have to go up because they have to, survive in life too. And so as those kept going up, pressure of how do we reduce our budget? Are we, we talk about if there's across the university, we have to talk about trying to do a 10% budget decrease. Well, I'm in a weird spot. If I have a student saying I need this accommodation, I legally have to pay for that. And then I don't have funding for whatever else. So it just really started putting us in a big headbutting match against the legal and moral responsibilities we have to support our students and to just how the funding was set up previously. So now our budget is funded in through the main university budget in the same way that like employee accommodations are. So now it's the centralized budget to the university to provide any of those resources that we need to pay for out to students. And that way we can still have an operational budget that's actually for the working component of my team and the office in general. So that's been one of the shifts that's really happened, just to really better align it with providing better resources to students. And so because of all of that, it was student affairs was funding the office, which meant that our services were really only for students.
Right.
And the other part is we were going through an extreme staffing shortage within our team at the time. So there was a window of time where we had one full-time staff member. And I think it was about the time that you were referencing. And so there was also just a lot of limitation on, if I'm meeting with you and doing those services, that means I'm not meeting with the students and developing their accommodations or making sure that they're being implemented. So I think there's the time resource that was equally a big factor in limiting where there could be some additional time for those aspects.
Thank you. I'd like in my vision of how our podcast can make an impact, other universities are listening to this, and it's these kinds of things that can help people think outside of what they're currently limited to. So simply moving from being funded by a branch that is only working with a certain type of person to a broader branch. I don't know if I'm making an analogy about a tree here or not, but seem to help with this particular issue. But then there's staffing changes and whatever too. So thank you for explaining.
But luckily now, we've been able to hire some additional staff, like replace people that had been leaving at those times. And through the state, there's been a better prioritization for supporting students that have medical needs or any other kind of life circumstances. So they've helped allocate more funding for students, making sure that they have basic needs met. And so that's an area that we've had direct support where we've been able to hire additional staff based off of the state putting more focus in that area, both, verbally and financially.
Great.
It's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. This isn't one of the listed questions. What's your favorite part of the work you do?
The thing that I always come back to is this is really a place where you get to see an immediate actual impact of your work. In positions I've had before, it's kind of like the parenting model of you'll thank me when you get older, where, we try to set things up. We try to teach students, try to get them to learn something so that way down the road, it will really help them out. And this is really right now in my face, something I need to deal with, situations. And so, making sure that students have the ability to access school, that right now is having the impact. So myself and my team talk about this all the time with me is they're very thankful that we get to see the immediacy of that impact and know more firsthand, like the benefit that we're working toward. And it's not just deep down, I know this is making a difference. I know this is helping. You get that kind of instant gratification, which is good and bad in a lot of cases. But in this way, it gives very real, tangible, daily, I can say, this is how I helped this student today, where I just don't think a lot of other positions really get to offer that. And so I think that's a really awesome place for me to be able to see that with such immediacy.
That must be great, actually.
It's wonderful. Yeah.
Are there any challenges that you have at SASS?
Yeah.
Listeners can't see the look on Rock's face, but
hey, it's sunshine and rainbows all the time. No.
Oh, good.
Interview over.
Yes.
You know what the music is.
Yes. I mean, challenges, I think it's people in the room get this just as much as I'm sure our listeners do. We work with people, and no matter what, people are messy. There's not a clear cut, this is how you deal with something. And part of what the accommodations really approach is supposed to be is one-on-one working with people to hear what they are dealing with. And so if I'm working with a student with a certain diagnosis, that gives me some generalizations of maybe what they're experiencing, but I don't know what classes they're in. I don't know, what their lived experience has been previously, what supports they have had or haven't had previously. And so when they come in, it's not just, you have this diagnosis, so you are eligible for this list of 3 things. It really is, no, we need to sit down and hear what you're dealing with, what has your experience been medically, how do your symptoms show up, and then respond to that. And so as a challenge, that can be really exhausting because you're taking in all of the student situations, processing that, and then trying to come up with an answer pretty quick. And usually that's, within the same meeting time frame. And it's not, again, it's not a detriment to people sharing their experience. That's exactly what they're supposed to be doing. But, social work background, any sort of just connecting with other people, you can get really exhausted from that. And I think the other challenges, and something that I've been trying to talk about more recently, is accommodations are typically something that people think about when they themselves need it. It's not always a go-to, I'm going to intentionally set this up for people who maybe are experiencing, a certain medical diagnosis. It's kind of like the law. Most laws are written in response to an action that has happened. It's very rare that we're preemptively doing great at that front, because that's just how people work. We're kind of selfish by nature, so we think about our own view of the world. And if I've never had to deal with a difference to how I approach something, I probably haven't developed a way for other people to go through that with me. So I think just that challenge of really understanding what one person is dealing with, and then also sharing that with other folks who then have to implement more aspects. So just being able to make sure that I am accurately representing the student, making sure that their privacy is still maintained and we're not disclosing things that we're not supposed to, and that it really can be a lot of creative thinking, because most of the time we're just going back to well, this is how I went through a thing, so this is how I'm going to set it up. Or I was taught to go through and learn this subject matter this way, and that's how I'm going to teach it to somebody else. And I think as the years have gone on, there's obviously been a huge change in terms of like hazing policies and all of that, to say we need to pull away from where it's truly harmful to folks. And now we're kind of in the realm, I think, where we can start shifting to, and we're causing harm maybe in some other ways, but less in our face about it. So that's recently we made a big shift that our university is predominantly only providing digital textbooks to people. And that's just how, our university kind of made a shift. And in general, it's been a really wonderful shift, because that allows for resizing of text really easily, screen readers to be used more readily available in all of those. And if we had done that 30 years ago, which technology probably wasn't really there for digital books, but if we had more of those resources like focused in the publishing realm, that may have been something. And then that means that students could have had a better option going forward, because now you can pretty much get a digital or a hard copy of a book. And it may on the surface seem like the same thing, but when maybe I can't read printed text, now I have a digital book that can be read out loud to me, and I can still get that information and I still get to participate, where before that was an access issue that people didn't think about, because the majority of the population could typically read printed text. And so it was always a specialized, we have to set up a special thing for this to work. And so I think that's where, as we're shifting, that's one of the challenges, is now figuring out how can we make more things more accessible all across the board. Yeah, it's a tough area to explain, but yeah.
Well, let's talk more about that, because I was just sitting here, I was trying to preamble my comment or question with my background, I was going to say, but don't have to, but will. So for my background in disability studies, we have a very firm distinction between access and accommodation. Quote unquote, the party line is access good, access doing all the things in advance before anybody shows up. Accommodations, not bad, but we're going to squint at you and be like, hey, why are we waiting till Stephanie shows up with her specific need? Now, it's not the office of it's based on what you just said. I'm not gonna, sorry, disability studies folks out there, I'm not gonna push them on this one. How do you? It sounds like you, at least, and SASS are working. Hey, if things are accessible, we're gonna go with that. But we do have to do we do have to do accommodations, because that's the nature of the work in the office. Say more about that.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of the idea behind universal design. Like, we can always be adapting, changing, modifying, whatever word goes in there.
Right.
But we can always be approaching a way that more people have access. And that should be the baseline, I guess. Like, that is the message, the gospel I will speak for everybody, is we should be making it so more people have just the outright ability to be able to participate and have access. And I think on the spot a little bit of this, trying to define the difference between those accommodations really, I think, serve the purpose for where we haven't met that yet. And so making sure that we're taking that step beyond, we haven't thought about that specific scenario. And you're right, we need to do something different in that case, because the way we've set it up so far hasn't worked. And whether that's for you particularly or any other person. And then ideally, I guess the next step would be, and how can maybe we include that going forward more? So that way it may have taken, Susie here to show up and say, hey, let me point out where this wasn't working great.
Right.
But then all of us have the responsibility, I think, collectively, morally, to say, you're right. Maybe that's a way that I could adjust my entire practice to better match. So that way the next person maybe doesn't have to come forward because we're already doing it for them.
whether there've been 7 Susies over the last 3 years, or, there was just one, but it worked. Wow, it really worked better.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's...
And I know Cindy and I have actually talked about a lot in just how assignments get completed now and how instructors set up assignments for classes. And I know through my education, it was really you either took a test or you wrote a paper. Those were the 2 ways that you demonstrated your knowledge.
And you probably didn't have a choice between those 2.
You didn't have a choice.
You had a test class and the paper class.
If you were in the English class, you wrote a paper. If you were in, sciences, you did a test. And there's obviously the outliers on there, and I can't go into all of them, but sometimes you have a lab that you have to do or you give a presentation. But it really was that focus of you were told this is the way you will demonstrate your knowledge. And one of the really nice things that I think has been slowly filtering in is more and more faculty have really been looking at is the way I had to do this the only way to do it? And so now you have to do a thing at the end of the term that culminates, everything that you've been researching. You can do a presentation. You could do a paper. You could do a podcast if you want. You could do whatever, as long as you are showing me in whatever method that is, what you've learned or what you've researched. And so that just allows, different participation. And I think those are some of the tweaks that, the old school pedagogy and approach of you have to do it the way you were taught to do it, and there's no way that you can deviate, I think is something that's being broken. And I think that's something I'm really excited about, like the generations coming up, is they really seem to be questioning a lot of those legacy aspects, I guess, to say, do we have to keep doing it that way? And it doesn't reduce, the rigor of classes. It doesn't reduce the end products. It just means, I might be able to get my point of view across in a different way. In the same way we have professional artists, we have professional writers, we have professional orators, like all of those different areas. And you are successful in your individual field, but the path getting up there maybe wasn't designed to let you showcase that success in that way. So hopefully we're getting there to change that.
Hopefully.
I know.
We talk more about that in the future too?
Absolutely.
I'm redesigning winter classes right now with this very thing in mind, in terms of, well, what is the final product?
Yeah.
Is it a paper? I was a few minutes late for our recording. I had final project presentations just now, and I had a student that designed this beautiful, well, I don't know what it was, but it was a circular platform covered with plastic, and then it had sand, and then grouted in was 3 distinct labyrinths. And one was, if you followed it along, it closed off and was inherently inaccessible. And another one was also, but you didn't know it until you reached the end. And then there was a thing, and we could look at that and say, well, that's real pretty, but come on, that's not doing a paper. Well, no, it's not. It's not. But they have to write down, well, drawing on this and this and this, I did it. That is that demonstration.
Right. And that, I think, not only does it just get to different learning styles, but it allows for people who, whatever a medical diagnosis, maybe it's, I have a disorder where I just get very exhausted. My fingers and my hands get very exhausted really easily. So typing is just whatever that might be. That's a hypothetical example. And so if every time I'm being told my end product is I have to sit down and, write for that 2 hours straight, that may be something like any individual person just physically isn't capable of, but it doesn't mean they don't know the knowledge, or they don't know the knowledge. They can't talk about it, and they may be able to go on for, that could be the 12-hour, let's just sit down and have a full presentation where they're displaying just as much, if not more knowledge than somebody who could write that long. And I think that's where more of those approaches to see how can there be different ways of showcasing that knowledge is just something that everybody needs to explore a little bit more.
Can you talk a little bit about the relationship between SASS and faculty? I've talked to some people in some other offices that support faculty before, like the grants office and even SASS at a previous time. And it seems like sometimes faculty are not that easy to work with. And I want there to be a good relationship between the departments that help us and us. And then I think about how SASS knows that having more like universally designed assignments and things in class can accommodate without the formal accommodations, various kinds of learning styles. And Ryan and I in particular are trying to get that message out, right? Like that your life will actually be easier, that it's not actually extra work depending on how you think about it, right? And so I would like SASS to help faculty understand that universal design principles are actually better and easier. But if faculty don't have a good relationship with you, then either I have two thoughts. One, maybe it could improve if you could teach them that it's actually going to be less work, or two, they're not going to listen to you because they don't have a good relationship. So how much do they respect you? How much do they know about you? Don't say anything that you're worried about, but I don't think your boss is a faculty member.
I think the biggest challenge, I think one gets back to how we were trained to do whatever our subject matter is. And so there's a little bit of the reliance on, this is how I learned, so this is how I have to teach other people. And in some capacity, my office is one of the few that get to tell people, no, you can't do that.
Nice. Can you invite me to this conversation?
But because there are such strict legal protections and requirements that we have to follow, sometimes that turns into us saying, no, you cannot do that. And I think this is a universal faculty and probably a universal human things. None of us like being told, no, you're doing it wrong. And so I think that's one of the core pieces where some people may not enjoy talking to me, or we might be one of those offices where it's like, oh, I see the title come across and it's like the eye roll, like, I know I'm going to be, getting in trouble. Like, and that's never our intention. Like, we don't want to come across as, we're the principal's office and you're in trouble, and so you have to come down and meet with us. I think on one hand, the message that I try to tell folks is, as much as we're here to support the students and make sure that they're able to participate in the best way possible, we also want to make sure, like, you don't get sued and have those protection points for everybody. Because, that's just an extra thing. Nobody wants to go through that process. So we want to make sure that we're really focusing on how can we be upfront about those things. And like you said, it might feel in the moment, and it sometimes will be, this is going to require some extra work on my part to get this into whatever, or I have to rewrite my syllabus, or I have to rewrite my course objective a little bit because I only reference that paper that I write, or that has to be written. I don't reference it as the end project. And so now I have to come up with a rubric that can grade for all of those. And that's a lot to do when I'm already overworked and I'm trying to get through the next day. And that's always the fine balance of, are there some of those things that can be done when there is time, so that way you don't have the pushback later down the road, or it's just already more accessible for other folks to join in. And then you don't get a complaint or whatever it might be to say, like, well, I don't like how you're setting this up. I'd really like if you could change it. Well, at some point, if we can work on those changes, fantastic. And that's where between our team and then instructional technology and instructional design, those efforts to figure out how can we shift things. COVID is a great example for a lot of issues, but very specifically with some of the intentional design behind classes, every class, save for the 0.001%, switched to online overnight, basically. And so faculty that had already, looked into, how do I teach online? How do I set things up to really integrate technology and remote learning, had a much easier transition period because they were already starting to develop how to do that. And the folks who were more resistant to it or just had never approached it kind of got the trial by fire, where it was, you don't have a choice right now. Like, you're either doing this or you're not teaching anymore, because this is the only way we can do it. And short of a worldwide situation like that, finding out where we can make some of those adjustments along the way, I think it will save a lot of the time in the long run, because you're not up against that pressure deadline. But that time still has to come from somewhere. And that's the perpetual life challenge, is figuring out, where can we do that? Are there, different ways. I think that's where I want my team to be able to, integrate more with faculty to talk about what are some of the ways that we figured out to do those things. So you don't have to figure out how to do it and then do it. We can help guide you through the how to do it. And then, it may be, I look at digitizing like articles. You can use a lot of systems to do that. And once you know how to do it, it's like 2 clicks of a button. It processes through, it can OCR the document right away. So that way it actually reads the text out loud, and then it's available and it can work with different formats. But if you're not somebody who has to do that on the regular, or you don't know, the process, you have to research how to do it, probably watch some YouTube videos, try it a couple times, figure out where the issues are. And all of that kind of trial and error period, I think, is really where the time suck happens. But at the end of the day, it's going to be hopefully a much smoother process down the road because you've already done it and you already set it up. So if you're reusing maybe a syllabus from last term to this term, you can tweak the dates and everything, but that template's already there. So if we can help people adjust the template so that way the little pieces can just get changed along the way, that's really what I would hope we can do, and where I think we can have more of an involvement with faculty and hopefully, continue building that more positive relationship across the board to say, we're really doing this to help out overall. It's not because we don't want to tell anybody no.
Especially faculty.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think is the disconnect? Because I feel like faculty, more than other people in the world at least, at one point were really interested in getting into the nitty-gritty and learning about something new. And now all of a sudden, when it's about this, they're not interested? Come on.
That's a really good,
Burn. Yeah,
It just occurred though.
Faculty.
Luckily, I'm not a faculty member, so thank you for taking that.
Us.
No, I think one is we all have a subject area, and faculty more so than most. There is a certain subject area that's really pulled your attention. And so you might be really great at that, but you don't know how to develop these other things. I would say in general, most faculty teaching at a college haven't gone through a lot of in-depth training in how to be a teacher and how to set up lesson plan, how to set up, rubrics and all that. And I think that's where some of the difference is. Well, it took me a long time to get those built because I don't have the expertise maybe in that area. So now the thought of how long did it take me to get all of that stuff figured out previously, I'm going to have to, duplicate all of that time again. And the exhaustion ideas of that's just so much to take on. Well, part of it is you've actually already learned how to do that once, hopefully. And so now it really is more of a tweaking and less of a let me start completely back from square one. The other part is just, I don't think there's a single individual working at colleges or universities anywhere that could say they have an abundance of free time to work on, not a specifically required like job task, whether that's teaching, you're a staff member, doing whatever it is. Like your time is being sucked up by your actual day-to-day obligations. And so when you have the time to be able to sit back and say, how can I do this? If you're still kind of weighing that, oh, this was such a big lift for me to take on initially to, get to where I am, is that all kind of pressure building into, that's too much for me to take on right now?
So it's a policy issue then, if you're saying that the faculty perceive this as optional. Versus, if faculty thought that it was part of their job, like it's clear to me that I have to grade my students on their work. No one had to sit me down and specially explain that to me. And I know it's part of my job. And so if my boss were to show up and be like, it turns out you haven't grading anyone, I would know that was a problem. And so the fact that there's even a mindset that this is extra, but the other stuff is part of my job means that we have failed to incentivize faculty or, use a stick versus a carrot to help them think that this isn't extra, that this is part of their job. Because what else would we count among part of their job? Grading, physically showing up to class, if that's what they have, but for some reason, making their content in a way that students can digest it. Up to 25% of your students have these needs, and that's not part of your job. It's pretty weird. That seems like it would be one of the key hallmark parts of your job.
So, and I think that is where, not speaking as a faculty member, I can't talk to everything that takes up all of the rest of faculty members' times. And I think that's where, again, it gets into some of that may not be the subject matter that I'm as particularly, focused on. And so it just gets harder to think of that as I should be doing this, as opposed to, it's more of a chore to take on. That might be one direction. I think the rest is, it's also, how many committees do you get invited to be a part of, and how many other responsibilities do you have? You do have to grade all of the assignments. So now, I'm grading all of these papers, and I want to make sure that they're all doing the right thing, and that's taking up time. And I think it's just that there's never enough time to do all of the things that we want to do. And I think that's probably, strictly from a policy aspect, one of the biggest areas where I'd say my office sometimes gets viewed as more of the principal team, because if there's a policy, that's where we say, and now you have to do it.
Right.
And it takes away, I think, some of the agency of, I'm doing this because I think it's the right thing, or because I want to develop and grow too, and figure out new ways to approach, the topic that I care so much about. Now it's whenever you tell somebody, and now you have to do the thing, there's kind of an innate, human nature, oh, well, now you're making me do it, and I don't want to.
Yeah,
I'm going to make you eat
I
chocolate.
can't make it accessible.
Please don't. You look at a little kid and you tell them, no, you have to eat all of your vegetables. Well, now I hate vegetables.
Yeah.
Well, but at the end of the day, if you eat them, you might actually really enjoy them. They're greatly beneficial to your development physically and all of those things. But as soon as it becomes a have to, then it takes away almost the desire to want to.
Yeah. Look, I'm sure
that's its own philosophical area that not enough time for absolutely anywhere.
I've been noticing how I spent my time lately, and I'll come home exhausted, and I'll be grumpy. That's important. That's rule number one. And then everyone else that I live with goes to sleep. And then I want to learn about pedagogy more, and I find myself thinking, what is the best way to incorporate this into my class? And I don't know why, but lately, in the last 3 months, that I'm getting re-energized about that. If there's other faculty out there, is there space in SASS to approach you and say, I want to do better. I want other people to do more work, to actively engage with you guys to get to do things better and differently? Do you have that as options?
Whether or not we've advertised it as such, officially on the record right now, FYI, I'll throw it out there. Totally fair.
We didn't tell you this is a microphone.
It's okay. It's all right. I consent to this. I think with that is something, whenever we have somebody reach out and say, I want to learn more about this, I want to figure out a way to, develop this differently. I can say it for myself. I will encourage my team, but minimally for me, I will find a way to make that happen with anybody. Because again, if somebody wants to care about actually wants to pursue it, let me know. And I will find a way to make that time. And even today, being asked to be a part of this is a way that I can showcase some of that. And in the same way that everybody has something else they could be doing, that's part of my prioritization as well. Part of my daily task, getting back to that question, is how can I connect with people to help share that information and help them pursue that knowledge too? Because at the end of the day, it's only going to benefit people more. So why not? And if that means, there's fewer issues that come back my way, then great, because then I get to focus more on the positive side of things and not, dealing with maybe a not great complaint.
Yeah, I know we've done things with Disability Pride Days where we've had, SASS focused, but we should do more outreach.
Yeah.
Throughout the year.
And I think that's we talked about, some of the challenges that we face with other or with faculty. I think that's one where, everybody has to make the time to be able to do that outreach. 2, it has to fit in somewhere. And I think I still go back to that. I think every single person has enough, on their daily task list that it's like, well, I'm hitting my 40 hours. I'm hitting, the formal capacity of what I have here. And like even you said, you get home and then you start researching it. And that's probably more on your personal time.
Right.
And so I think that's the tough balance is we also have to have time to just not and have time to decompress and, take care of ourselves. So that I think is just one of the core challenges for anybody. Like you have to figure out a way to balance how you're taking care of yourself while still, pursuing more knowledge or pursuing change and development. And it will always be a battle, I think, unfortunately, till we're all, multi-billionaires and can just not have to work ever and do whatever we want for fun 24 hours a day.
Well, we've got with AI these days.
Right.
Oh, we are starting to come to the end of our episode. I invented a lightning round while we were sitting here. Would you like to participate in the lightning round? And we'll see how it goes. You will have
Let it strike.
you will have 30 seconds to answer as many of these questions as you can, hopefully using one-word answers like yes or no. Are you ready?
Should I set a timer?
Yeah, no, I see that. I have a second hand on this clock right now. Okay, number 1. Can SASS help with changing the loud machines that are used for landscaping outside of student classes?
Immediately no, but we can get you connected.
Okay, number 2. If there is a loud air conditioning unit or fan in the classroom, can SASS make the professor turn that off?
No, because that's a union protected thing that we probably need to work with our facilities.
You have 10 seconds left. Can you make at SASS professors speak more loudly or differently?
No, but we can provide technology to assist with that.
Can you make anyone get a vaccine? You have 2 seconds left. Okay, we're out of time. Sorry. Well, thank you for participating in the first lightning round. Did you like that? I'm going to invent them for future guests. We do have several future guests, by the way, dear listeners. And so, Ryan, are there other things that you want to cover? We just did the lightning round, so we could end the show, but we have about 3 more minutes left. The freak has agreed to.
Yeah, sure, but I don't want to bring it down.
Okay, well, we can end at the lightning round. This is an editable.
Yeah, right. We can.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, well, yeah. Okay.
Well, let's find out. Do you have 3 more minutes?
I have 3 more minutes.
Okay. Do you have 10 more minutes?
I can make
But
10
not
minutes.
great. Okay, let's try to keep
Okay.
it a little short.
So,
Okay.
Given the changing educational federal landscape,
Oh boy.
how you doing? How are you? Well, I kind of do mean that.
I was given a time limit, and that is how it started. I think regardless of where, politically everything falls, whenever there's as much change as is occurring right now, it's tough to feel like you have solid footing because the things that you've been able to look at and say this has worked before might not be so true anymore. And as all of that shifts, it means that there's always a constant moving target to aim toward. And so kind of like all of us, you start the day, you never quite really know how it's going to go. And I think more than anything, the time that I've been working in this office has really shown like I will never actually know where my day goes because something is always going to change. One thing that I really appreciate is there are a lot of really awesome laws protecting and providing some specific direction for accommodations. But I also look at there are other populations that have had feelings that they have had the same level of protection or, it's just an unknown. And I always want it to be a priority because I think this is, an area where it can impact anybody. It doesn't matter, who you are. Any given day, you may need an accommodation and you can't, always prepare for that. You can't control it. You can mitigate some aspects, but it's kind of an equal opportunist it can hit anybody in any capacity. And so it needs more protections and like we need to be focusing on how we can keep things supporting more people, providing more of those resources out and about and really helping the people who typically are disenfranchised and excluded. Like how can we really be focusing on bringing them back? And, whether I agree or disagree with the ways that that's happening, that again, different podcasts maybe, but I think if people can really approach it that way of, I want to make sure, my friends get to be here with me. I want to make sure my family gets to be here with me. and participate, like there is enough room at the table for everybody. It's just, maybe we need to change the shape of the table
Or the height.
or the height or, the width, whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't mean that we can't all be here together. And so it's not pie. Like there is enough to go around. We just have to think of it more in that realm of how do we make it so people can show up and not put a limit on the space available, I guess. Yeah.
And that's
Maybe that feels philosophical. I don't know.
Kate, would you be my life coach?
I'm not certified in that, but I can get you connected with some folks.
See this? You're doing it again. This is good.
I know. The short answer of what my office is, we are a huge referral source. We help people understand policies and procedures and refer to a lot of other people.
I'm glad that you're doing okay, because I was watching the news and, what's going on out there is crazy. There's all these problems.
You know what the music means?
Is there music?